I'm with Aaliyah Captain Tracy Nelson, who is retired as he's the post commander for the Dothan Post, which covers 10 counties. Is that correct?
Correct, Dothan and Troy.
What are the 10 counties this post?
Well, it starts down here, of course, for the Dothan area. It's Houston County, Henry County, Dale County, Barber County, Geneva County, Coffee County, Pike County, Butler County, Crenshaw County, and Covington County. So it's basically, it's about 100 mile by 100 miles, like 100 square miles probably.
How long have you been with the troopers?
Fixing to be, I'm going on, I've got 24 and a half right now, so basically 25.
You're third generation.
Yes, sir, I sure am.
We were looking a minute ago at your granddaddy, Skeeter Pate.
That's right.
Started as a trooper and retired as a captain
Yes.
at this post building.
That is exactly right, yeah.
And it was over ABI.
He was the commander of ABI in the same region, which is, counties are a little different than the way it was back then, but not by much. So it's pretty much the same counties. He was the captain over ABI down here, yes.
Your dad retired as a captain.
He did. He retired out of Montgomery, but he was here for quite a few years, but he basically retired out of Montgomery in ABI.
And your son.
And my son is now a trooper, and he is currently assigned to Lee County, but May 1st will be my effective retirement date, and he is being transferred back down here to work in this post.
All right. Almost 25 years as troopers, and you've gone from trooper to the head honcho for 10 counties, the captain.
If you want to call it that, yeah.
You have, just because of knowing you, you have been the PIO.
That's right.
And you had to work in Montgomery.
Worked there almost 2 years, yes, as the commander of that public information. That's where I handled news from all over the state.
By the way, you did a great job. And then you were in driver's license.
I was in driver's license for this region for almost 7 years. I worked down there, and when I left driver's license, I was actually what you call the region commander then, and I was over here in Mobile, so I had a pretty large territory to cover at that point.
All the things you've done, what have you enjoyed most in your 25 years?
I think just being part of things. I mean, I'm just a kid from Slocum, or from Dothan actually. I live in Slocum, but I'm from Dothan, and I basically call myself from Slocum now because I've been there for over 25 years. But I grew up in Dothan and never really thought much. I mean, I was that kid that didn't want to stand up in front of the class and with the teacher calling on me. But some of the things I guess I enjoyed the most is talking to people. The years that I spent going around talking to events with people, companies, schools, big events. That kid that wouldn't talk in front of people, probably some of the most memorable things that I'd ever done was I stood up and talked to about 10,000 people for about an hour and a half, on stage, and I never thought I could do anything like that. I think that's probably some of the most memorable as far as fun things that was doing. I traveled, of course, with Troy football. I did the Talladega races every year as the voice for Talladega on the radio for traffic control. I did that every year from the helicopter. I did that for, oh my gosh, I can't tell you how many races I did that, and finally I gave that up. Worked in driver's license for a lot of years and had a lot of input with the chiefs up there, the major that was over it when I left. I thought we did a really good job on bringing driver's license forward, and it's still advancing today, which is great. But if you want to talk about the most memorable moment of my career, you think about all these. Everybody thinks about big stuff, and it's not. As far as my career goes, the biggest thing is me graduating Trooper Academy, of course. Probably the number 2 thing would be to see my son graduate Trooper Academy. But probably the one thing that really stands out is I was on Alabama 27 north of Enterprise, and we work rural areas most of the time, and we're out there by ourselves and whatnot, and most of the time people talk about something scary that happened. But I was on Alabama 27 north of Enterprise, and I remember it was in It was early afternoon, and I stopped a pickup truck for speeding, and it was an older guy driving, elderly man, and I got him out of the car. And back in those days, we'd get him out of the car and bring him back and sit down with you. And I had him in my car with me, and he said, "Man, I sure appreciate you not writing me a ticket." And I'm like, "Well, what makes you think I'm not gonna write you a ticket?" You know? He said, "Well, I ain't had one forever, since I was like 18 years old." And I said, "Well," I said, "you sure were going fast." And just started talking to the man, and I decided to write him a warning and give it to him. And he said, "I appreciate that, man." He says, "A trooper stopped me, gave me my first ticket, 18 years old." I said, "Is that right?" He said, "Yeah, you probably wouldn't know him. He's dead and gone." And I said, "Well, I know a lot of those old guys, so, I've been around a long time, and, as far as family." And he says, "Well, he's been dead a long time." And I said, "Well, tell me what his name is." And he said his name was Skeeter Pate. And I said, so I told that man, I said, "That was my granddaddy." And he said, "Are you kidding me?" And we talked for a little while longer about him. He knew my granddad real well back in those days. So when you think about things that happen that stand out the most, that's it. I mean, I don't believe there's anything in the world could have been a better in my life than stopping a man that my granddaddy stopped all those years earlier. You know what I mean? It'd probably been, I don't know how many years. I mean, because that was in 1997 when I stopped him. And that guy was old then, and my granddaddy, had been dead since the late 80s. And he was a trooper on the road in the 50s and maybe early 60s, maybe. And so it'd been all those years, and here I am stopping the same man that my grandfather had stopped. And so that's probably most memorable, probably.
That's amazing that many years between your granddaddy and you pulling it over, and kind of like, what are the odds?
What are the odds? I mean, it's, but I don't know. I remember after he drove off, it was just overwhelming. It was a weird feeling, and I still think about it today. I mean, it was neat. I don't know what happened to him, but it was good to me. It was really good to me.
And then he remembered.
Oh yeah, no doubt. He remembered all that, and it was a different time back then too. But it was certainly fun, and I think some of the other things that stand out is through your career. I mean, who would have ever thought that kid from Dothan been sitting in the governor's office and sitting there talking to the governor about how he can hire Alabama State troopers, and him telling me, show me a plan, and I'm sitting there with some other of my guys, and we're on the association for the Alabama State Trooper Association, and I turn around, scratch out a thing on a piece of napkin and hand it to him and said, "Here's your plan." And I said, who would have thought that would have ever happened to somebody like me, and but those are just things that blip by in your career, but it's neat that I could be doing it.
And when you took over this post, you're how many troopers short versus how many are you today?
Oh, when I took over this trooper post, and this is, of course, our agency did a lot of hiring since I've been here, so it's not me. I mean, it's the agency, and but my men and women that I have did such a great job of recruiting, and but we went from probably I want to think we had about I'd say for the whole troop it was probably wasn't more than about 35 to something like that maybe, and right now we're closer to 60 probably, something like that.
And I guess growing up with your granddaddy and your daddy is what made you want to be a trooper, or what?
Yeah. When I was a kid, of course, my dad, was a trooper. Obviously, my granddad. But when I was a kid, we would go up to the trooper post, which is where the old. Right now, it's where Popeye's Chicken. You probably remember that.
Yes,
It was up there on the hill, and when I was a kid, they had fish fries and all kind of stuff like that, and we would go to those things. And I was telling somebody today, actually, me and my little brother, we'd be up there busting rocks on the vise in the auto shop, and then Charles McClendon was the mechanic, and he'd whip us because we'd get rocks all over his floor, But we hung out up there, when time my mom would bring us up there, we'd see my granddad, or we would see my dad and my granddad, and then all the troopers that would stop by a lot of times at my granddad's house as I was growing up. And I knew a lot of those older guys like Lloyd Arrington and Will McCarty and all those guys, you know, from Grady too. I knew all those people from back in the day, and you know, because those guys, they were all really tight knit people back in those days. They cooked out fish all the time, did things. So I guess growing up around it, I can remember as very young telling people that I wanted to be a trooper, and I can still remember it in high school. Me and my high school English teacher got in an argument, and I wouldn't say it was an argument. She was getting on to me, you know, and she asked me what I was going to do in life, and I said, well, I'm going to be an Alabama State Trooper. And under my breath, I said, if you'll be the first one I'm going to write a ticket to. And I never forgot it. And I became a state trooper, and I remember going by Dothan High School and looking up there at her room thinking, I'm going to get you. And later on, I run into a woman at the Houston County Courthouse, and during I was getting ready for a trial, and this lady kind of butted into the conversation with me and an attorney. And I told the lady this was a private conversation, and she introduced herself to me. And I said, I just kind of looked at her, and she said, but you know me as Miss Kennedy. And she was my English teacher. She became the prosecutor. So it was crazy. That was a weird feeling too. But I've known about that. That's all I've ever wanted. I mean, and it took a lot longer than I thought to get hired, but I finally did, and in '96, and got hired and went off to trooper school against my wife's wishes. But
You've also served as a volunteer in Slocum. Was it rescue or fire?
Both. I started how I got into, I guess, really into public service was I got on the volunteer fire department in Webb, Alabama, and I was probably 21 probably, and moved out there from Dothan, and I got on the Webb, met a chief from there, and I became on the volunteer fire department. And then when I moved to Hodgesville, I got on the Hodgesville volunteer fire department, and I was on it for a good long time with Kenny.
Yes, Kenny Gibbons.
Kenny Gibbons was my fire chief, and he was a stern fire chief at that. And but he was really good. I mean, we had a really good fire department. And when I moved to Slocum and became a trooper, I met a guy, and he's a friend of mine still to this day. He's Kyle Hovey, and Kyle Hovey was on the rescue squad, and he talked me into joining the rescue squad to drive ambulance. And back then, troopers were not allowed to do that, but Kyle Hovey talked me into doing it, and a couple of my other friends were doing it on the side too. Even though it wasn't like we was doing anything, but just volunteering our time. And I started driving for the rescue squad, and I did it and joined the fire department, and I did that for quite a number of years, and until my job got to where it was taking me away too much, and I kind of stopped participating as much. But I still think a lot of those guys, the volunteer. I don't believe I've ever worked a wreck in my career that I ain't walked up and shook nearly every volunteer that was standing there's hand. I just truly believe that I couldn't do my job without them. If you ever work a wreck in an area that don't have volunteers, and you're standing there waiting on an ambulance to come or a fireman to come to help, and they don't show up, it's a misery. And I've been there. I've been that guy. And so I try to make sure, and I've told people all my career that they're who made me, because without them I couldn't have done my job. And I think a lot of them, some of them get a little overzealous at times, but at the same time they're some of the biggest help you could get.